Russia raises the number of soldiers killed in a Ukrainian strike on New Year's Day to 89. Kyiv warns Moscow will retaliate.
The European Commission confirms its offer of free vaccines to Beijing as the country tries to contain a fresh nationwide outbreak.
The US House of Representatives has been left in disarray, forced to adjourn after failing 3 times to elect a new speaker. Moscow is blaming soldiers' use of banned phones for allowing the enemy to locate the target in one of the bloodiest attacks in the nearly year-long war in Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry admits 89 of its soldiers died when Ukraine hit a college for conscripts in the occupied Donetsk area, shortly after midnight on New Year's Day. While the number of people killed is unverified, it's the largest death toll acknowledged by Russia in the war. Kyiv claims the figure is far higher. President Volodymyr Zelensky warns Russia will respond.
There is no
doubt that the current masters will throw everything they have left and everyone they can muster to turn the tide of the war. We must derail that Russian scenario, and we are getting ready for it. The terrorists must lose. Any attempt offensive they launch must fail.
Будь-яка спроба їхнього нового наступу повинна провалитися.
Moscow has released these images of what it says are strikes in Kramatorsk. The ministry spokesperson says 120 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in the attack. 2 US-made multiple rocket launch systems were also destroyed.
Brussels is offering free COVID-19 vaccines to Beijing in order to help it contain a mass outbreak of the illness following its decision to end strict nationwide restrictions. The European Commission confirmed on Tuesday that the proposition was made in recent days by the EU delegation in China.
In view of the COVID situation in China, Commissioner Kyriakides has reached out to her Chinese counterparts to offer the EU's solidarity and support, and this includes public health expertise, as well as through variant-adapted EU vaccine donations.
But Beijing is yet to respond to the offer, according to the European Commission. The EU is concerned that the lack of transparency in the country could mean new variants of COVID-19 are not identified quick enough. Some countries have already implemented measures for travellers arriving from China, like mandatory negative tests. Italy, France and Spain will require this from passengers or proof of vaccination. Beijing has described the restrictions as unacceptable and discriminatory. But the analysts say that for measures to be efficient, more coordination is needed. A meeting of EU experts and representatives of the 27 member states took place in Brussels on Tuesday. One of the proposals on the table is to analyse wastewater of planes coming from China to see if it yields new clues about any potentially dangerous variants, a measure already decided by Belgium.
The reason why in Europe we propose to sequence also the variants that arrive from China is the relative intransparency that China exhibits nowadays. They're not submitting really many sequences to the international databases. We are not sure that if a new variant would emerge, that they would immediately put it into the database. And that's pretty awful that we have to think that, because we like to think that the Chinese colleagues are upstanding scientists. But at a certain moment in China, science becomes politics.
But as the EU looks at China for the emergence of new variants, Professor Van Ranst says the danger could come from elsewhere, the US, where more variants are already emerging.
The corruption scandal engulfing the European institutions has brought the issue of MEPs' salaries back under the spotlight. Pay and allowances are public and can be consulted on the official website of the European Parliament. All MEPs earn around €9,400 a month gross, working out at €7,300 net. Each country then imposes an additional tax, which is why it can appear that they differ. But there are expenses they can claim for working outside their country, since they often have to be in Brussels or Strasbourg. They add up to around €4,700 a year, and there's a daily allowance for each day spent in either city of €338. On top of that, there are allowances for office costs, such things as renting a workspace, computers, telephones and other supplies. That adds up to almost €4,800. And they also have €27,000 a month at their disposal for hiring personal assistants, although that's not paid directly to the MEPs. And then, of course, there's retirement benefits. At the age of 63, MEPs are eligible for a pension equal to 3.5% of salary for each full year in office, which comes out of the EU budget. Opinions will differ as to how appropriate MEPs' remuneration is, but most would agree it should at least be enough to live decently on.
Blunt Rochester.
History has been made for the wrong reasons on Capitol Hill. The House of Representatives was adjourned without a speaker on Tuesday night, the first time since 1923 they had failed to choose a leader after a first-round vote. The start of a new Congress was supposed to be a victory lap for the Republican Party. Instead, its leader, Kevin McCarthy, failed 3 times in his bid to be elected.
No person having received the majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected.
McCarthy is still the leading candidate to replace Democrat Nancy Pelosi, who stood down in November. He says he is not giving up and will battle for as long as it takes to overcome a group of Trump-supporting hardliners who refuse to give him their votes.
We all came here to get things done.
The role of Speaker is one of the most important jobs in US politics. The House will keep voting until a candidate is elected. But after more than 5 hours of speeches and voting, members agreed to try again on Wednesday. The chamber cannot proceed with any other business until they have chosen a speaker.
France's version of the Oscars, the César Film Awards, has banned anyone under the investigation of a sexual or violent crime from attending their annual award ceremony. Now, this has been seen to be in response to one man in particular, French actor Soufiane Benacer, who is now banned from attending himself as he is currently being investigated for rape. He was previously seen as a frontrunner to receive an award for the film Forever Young. However, he was taken off a list of possible nominees last year after these allegations emerged. Now, in response, the film awards ceremony put out a statement saying that they were doing this out of respect for the victims, even if they were only presumed victims. But the decision by the César Film Awards has come into a lot of criticism, notably from the director of the film herself, who described some of the actions against Benacer as being a media lynching. What's more, to add fuel to the fire, her sister is Carla Bruni, the former First Lady of France. Now, she put out a lengthy statement on Instagram decrying the move, saying, "One of the foundations of our democracy is the presumption of innocence. Without this, all justice is random, debatable, and possibly corrupt." Now, this saga isn't new at all. In 2020, the Césars came into a lot of controversy over Roman Polanski, who won an award in that year's season. He's long been accused of raping a 13-year-old girl in the United States. Now, the recent decision by the Césars was seen to head off any potential protests that may occur, like the ones after Roman Polanski received the award in 2020. Now, this story is rooted in the sometimes conflicting issues of sex abuse in the film industry and the presumption of innocence. It's unlikely to go away anytime soon.
In Belgium, an art installation at the City of Liège's Guillemont station is brightening up the iconic building as well as the mood of the passengers. French artist Daniel Boren has covered much of the station's glass canopy with translucent vinyl, diffusing vibrant coloured light throughout the interior. It boosts the reaction, it casts a reflection on everybody. My kid's 13 years old and art isn't really his passion, but it's marked him. The ephemeral installation is also a logistical triumph. It involved putting in place around 5,000 self-adhesive translucent vinyl coverings over 10,000 square metres of the glass surface of the canopy. The first step was to clean the tiles, degrease them and then put on soapy water to put the vinyl in place. Once in place, it's just a question of trimming it to fit perfectly, leaving a tolerance between the vinyl and the joint. Passengers in transit through the station or visitors to the Belgian city will be able to admire the colourful and illuminating display until mid-October 2023.